Hello everyone, this is Toby from Toby's Urban Sketch, and today we're going to be sketching quickly some boats in a really loose, expressive style using just ink and watercolour. The reference, which is hopefully up here, is called #DrawMattandDougsBoats6. It's from Instagram, and it's from Doug Jackson Artwork and Matt Stoodley Art, who put up some fantastic challenges and also have two different styles, but really interesting styles of art. Links to all of that are in the description as ever. And like I always say, if you enjoy these videos, please do like and subscribe and comment if you want. It really helps boost my Instagram algorithm, my YouTube algorithm, and get me found by more people. Anyway, let's get started. So, last time I did something like this, sorry, I should just say, using a Unipin 0.2mm pen here. Last time I did something like this, I sort of talked through how I'd normally go through the shapes of something I wasn't sure of. And then I think it was Matt, it may have been Doug, commented on my video and on my Instagram that rather than thinking about it in the complicated way that I do, he just thinks about it, the boat that is, as being a box, and then you chop the sides off. So that kind of makes sense. So sort of thinking about that shape now, and basically just doing, not religiously doing a one-line drawing here, but I'm just trying to keep it really loose by joining everything together with these very sketchy lines and just working sort of front to back on this boat almost, getting what I think are the important shapes in. And you know, it doesn't have to be quote unquote right, so you can see I've had to extend the boat here, but that's fine. We just pop another couple of buoys in here to make that fit the image a little bit better, and then we can put these fun buoys or buoys depending on which English you speak. There we go. So that's the front boat mostly in. There's a few other interesting shapes I want to pop in, like this life ring. And then there's another little tube going up. And you don't have to know what everything is to be able to draw it. You're just looking at the shapes and picking what you think is interesting to go in. So I think, for example, I actually like these letters. I don't want them to be too typefacey. So again, we can join them up, move them around, and just make them recognizable without having to stick to exactly what they are. There we go. I think those letters will add something though. Then there's little areas where there's colour, and then the advantage of doing these sketchy lines is you can then very loosely come back in, and I'm looking at both what I've done to the boat and the reference image and just picking out what those reflective lines are going to look like. There's another boat now sat behind. So something just to think about is sort of where this boat is coming in relative to the other one. So you can see it comes in and touches here about on our first boat. Let's pop this cable in as well. That's the cable, the chain, and the reflection. So it's just something I noticed whilst I was wittering away. And then this top of the other boat comes across, and it ends just behind this first railing. Now these buoys I've sort of changed the position of, so we can't use them as our reference point, but the railing is fairly accurate, so that's fine to use. And it's got these fun tall little telegraph pole type thing. And let's just make this a bit 3D by adding in those shaping lines. And it's got a rail. I've left out this structure because I just can't work it out, and it doesn't seem to me to be important. There's a fun little sort of line coming up here, so we'll pop that in, and then still just working out relative to everything else. There's boats in the background, and you can see it sort of intersects where these two things cross over, so we can add that in. and just really loosely get the shape of it. And again, really loosely the reflective lines. This reflective line can come in. And we've got another boat a bit closer to us, and it intersects here. And then the angle is coming across a bit like that. Now the advantage again of, there you go, I made a mistake. Just as I was saying, the advantage of these loose lines is when you do make a mistake, it doesn't matter. Not that it ever matters. But you can just go back and crisscross over your lines like this. And because we're just going over the lines, and we've got so many and they're so loose, actually your eye picks out the bold one, the most important one, the correct one, and does what it wants with it. So we don't have to make everything exactly right the first time. It all just adds shape. So just trying to work out what's going on here. So we've got a kind of rectangular bit of fabric, and then I think it comes down the front there, and then a couple of lines coming up. And again, these reflective lines, remember, reflections will be coming towards you, so the reflection will be coming towards where the camera is. We've got a few more boats just around and about. Again, these are going to get looser and looser. They only need to suggest the right shape. But where there's buoys and things, maybe it's good to have them bold, and we can have some really fun colours going on there. And then get our sort of horizon line. There's another boat. We'll just really loosely get in here. There only need to be suggestions in the distance there. And then, really interesting in this, I'm not sure how it's going to work with the colours, but we'll find out, is we've got this, what looks like the edge of the harbour, a big built up structure. The window, pop another window in, there's a door here. I think we need another part of the horizon drawn in there. And above here is the actual sky. Get a few more of these tool things in, these poles. There's actually a couple coming up behind this. And then there's here, and there's some coming up there. There's another boat, and there's one there. Okay. So there's most of our pen work done. Just going to go around and pick out a couple of places that we might want to highlight with some of our colours. And then it's really important to get some texture in. This isn't flat, this is water. It's got ripples, it's got movement. And just by bringing our pen around, it adds perspective, it adds texture, it sort of reaffirms what we've done. And it just fills some of these blank spaces which otherwise might look a bit uninspiring. The next thing I'm going to do is just jump in with a bigger pen, a 0.5mm pen. And we've got a lot of lines going on. Let's just bring out these really big shapes. So we get that outline there. Not all of them, but certainly let's get our main boat. So that's done. And then just more loosely some of the sort of next level boats. And then I think just our horizon line would benefit from becoming more obvious. When you have something grounding the whole image, it does simplify what your eye has to do. And that, I think, is the pen done. So, just getting my light fix back on there. Going to move straight on to the colour. So we've got a very tiny strip of sky, but we are going to colour that in. So let's just get some water across. I should say I've put some masking tape around just to show, if you don't use it already, the sort of fun that can add. Now this is a mix of, I'll show you my palette at the moment by the way, because I've been doing a lot of sketching today and it's really mucky. So I enjoy using a palette like that when I'm just doing these really loose sketches, because it makes all the colours more interesting, a bit muddier, which for me is quite a nice aesthetic. And it means I've got sort of red and green and blue and brown areas of my palette, and I can just pick out a pigment and then just sort of move it into different places on my palette to decide what kind of colour I actually want. The disadvantage is going to make it slightly more challenging. I normally clean my palette to do these. It's going to make it slightly more challenging to explain exactly what I'm trying to do. But this is a mix of cerulean and I think sort of burnt umber. And then this yellow here is a Hansa yellow mixed with several things, to be honest. A bit of red and a bit of blue primarily. And just getting in these different tones that are in the background here. So we've got that bluish sky, and it drops a bit more just brown in a few places. But it's a bluish sky followed by a muddy yellowy brown wall, and there's hints of red in this building, so we just bring that out. And then what I'm going to do is make all of this water flow together, no pun intended, with those colours, so it's all just joined up. So that's a mix of Payne's Grey and Cobalt, and then if we just get a bit more Cobalt in there, as we come forward it can become a bit bluer, a bit brighter. But get, you know, this colour just flowing and joining up. I'm just going to bring the blue down so the sky links all the way down. And then we can have a look at where the shadows are. So this boat here is in shadow, and then the side here is in shadow, and here. And all we're doing is continuing this sort of murky blue. I'm going to pop some greens in a few places, just because I want to, really. There isn't actually much green. There often is green in the sea, but I hope you agree, it sort of lifts it in a different direction. It also synergizes quite nicely with this greeny brown there. Now, whilst that's all drying, we've got some brighter tones in the boats. Just going to try a cerulean for this boat at the front, and that works okay. I'm going to pop a little bit of Cobalt in there as well, just to brighten it up. And then at the bottom there's a definite sort of brown, which I'm going to go for a mix of raw sienna and burnt sienna, and just let that all wash together and come into the sea as well. Now this cerulean's going to have to come down as our reflection, and our miscellaneous blue mix just soften into there, so that we've got a reflection, but it's not a hard-edged reflection. It doesn't sort of sit out from the rest of the sea. There's similar colours going on in this boat. I'm going to drop them in, but I'm not going to colour the whole thing in. I think that would be too much. But we'll leave it at that and see. And then we've got a sort of lot of light shining off this boat at the back. So this is quinacridone gold, which is a lovely colour for light, and it's got a black border. So I'm just going to go for the easy option, which is a bit of Payne's Grey dropped in, and just let it do whatever it wants, really. And the same for this awning type sheet or whatever it is. All right. Now, is there anywhere else you want to bring forward? Probably just the edges of some of these boats can come forward, and I've got a mix of that Payne's grey and a little bit of red, which is just quite a nice warm colour, I always think, or a warm mix. And then we'll get a bit more of our miscellaneous blue mix and just get that in the sea. You know, we can just keep editing things as we tone up certain areas. Other areas might look underpowered. So the sky is now looking a bit underpowered because there's a lot of extra things going on in the foreground now. Same these buildings. I'm going to leave the background wall though as it is. And you're getting a lot of reflections on the camera. Hopefully if I just tilt it a few ways, you can see the colours are doing their own thing. They're being quite interesting. Obviously this style of painting has a high happy accident rate, so you have to just trust what you're doing is going to work. Just lifting a little bit of the excess water here, otherwise it will never dry and it will just keep running and running, and you'll never get it'll be a long time till you understand what's happened from the additions of colours and whatnot. Just lifting some colour off the page in a few places as well, and then maybe even adding a bit of colour just to get some of these reflections a bit more obvious. Okay. Now, the next fun to have is with these buoys. So we got a lot of bright primary colours, and our eye, you know, everyone knows what a buoy or buoy is, and our eye will just know from these bright splodges that's what we're dealing with. So just get some of these dots of colour in and around. It's completely fine that it's blooming out like that. And don't forget, the colour has to be reflected. So that's why it's fine that it's blooming out here and here. The reflection's already done for us. There's actually a black one, which is interesting. So let's just try that, see what happens. This one can be black. A bit of black in there. Just going to control the amount of water on my brush a little bit more now, just so I can get some of these colours in more purposefully. And we'll go for a quinacridone yellow along here as well. You can even try a sort of dull purple one. And over here as well. Get some of these colours splashed in. And then just with our blue we can do the same, get some, it's where we've got these white areas, if we just want a bit more texture or interest, whatever, get some of those colours splashed in. And I'm just going to take a sort of watery mix of essentially lots of things on my palette, and that will come out as a grey. There you go. If you mix everything, you will fairly invariably find you get some kind of grey. And I'm just using that, as you can see, to tone down the inside of the boats. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm going to let that dry. And one thing you could do now, to finish off, I want to add a bit more brightness, a little bit of more neat lines. A perfectly reasonable and probably a normal way of doing it is to just let this dry and then come back in with a brush, either the same one or perhaps a smaller brush, and add in whatever little touches of colour. What I'm going to do is use a couple of watercolour pencils. So I'm going to take a cadmium red watercolour pencil. I'm going to take a cobalt blue, if I can find it. That looks like a cobalt blue. And probably a dark, so I've got a Payne's grey as well. Now with these, whilst it's still wet, you can really add in some vibrant colour, and we can sort of neaten up some of these edges. Especially in things like this. What you'll find is when it's wet, it will come off the pencil very easily, and it won't leave those sort of pencil-y marks unless you really rub. I actually also want a yellow, so I've got a yellow here. This is a Naples yellow, so you do actually have to rub quite hard, and that will clear out some of the pigment and leave some texture. But I think that's effective, and we can do the same here. So it's actually just leaving lots of texture. So all I'm doing now is just dipping it in the water, and that should help it just drop a bit of colour. I'm not doing the best job with the Naples yellow. If you use Naples yellow as a watercolour pigment, you'll know it's an opaque colour. It's a bit like a gouache, and the watercolour pencil similarly doesn't respond quite the same way. So I've got a different one here, a light yellow, and you can see that's immediately just coming up really easily. There we go, that's better. We didn't get the yellows in here, but again we can just use our watercolour pencil to mark in some areas of yellow, and these just won't, like here, spread everywhere, which I think is really lovely, but at this stage you kind of just want to put in those little lines. So you can either wait till it's dried and just use watercolour, or you can use something like a watercolour pencil which won't spread too much. And then here's my Payne's grey coming in. I'm just going to bring in a little bit of detail at the bottom of some of these boats. And kind of little texture marks where it's dry. Just going really cautiously because I don't want to leave too many weird new textures. And just to show you one other thing as well that you can do with watercolour pencils is if you take a wet brush and just get the end of the pencil wet, then you can flick, and it's another really good way of just leaving some splashes, just like that. It's quite a controlled way. Anyway, that is my sketch done, which is fortunate because I think my light's just about to die. I'll wait for it to dry, I'll scan it in and see what you think. And now for the fun bit, peeling off our border. And there we go. So you can see, although it's not worked perfectly and I got a bit too splashy, it leaves you with a really lovely clean edge to a quite random, splashy, definitely loose image. But you can imagine how this could easily be framed and look really interesting on your wall. Always makes for a good space for a signature as well, having it just at the bottom there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe, and do let me know any feedback you've got or anything you'd like to see in the future in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching.